Howdy, howdy. Got a question for y'all. Who likes free food? I do. See? So, I recorded a video at the, I don't know, midsummer or so that I realized I forgot to post. So it's just been sitting there waiting and waiting. Well, now that we're at the end of summer, coming up on fall, figure we'll just go ahead and do a continuation of how the whole thing's been going. So before I get into that, here's that clip. What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about something that is becoming more and more important, which is how do I grow something that I don't necessarily have the seeds for, or don't know how to get to that point to where it's ready for transplant. So let's get into it. All right, so here we have two store-bought plants that are in the grocery section, not in the gardening section. These are in the grocery. These are organic basil and rosemary, still in the dirt. All right, so we're going to take these plants and we're going to make the most of them. All right, so y'all remember this garden bed where I planted cilantro and basil? Well, I did it from seed and I did it too late, and then I burnt it because I didn't get enough water on it on time. So pretty much nothing that sprouted, and anything that did sprout died off rather fast. We've been having some pretty hot days. It don't take much. So let's take our plants. Now, the rosemary in my area, we can actually leave this in the ground year round and it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? So we don't have to replant this. The basil, on the other hand, kind of hit or miss, but odds are we're gonna have to keep replanting it. However, with this one, like I said, we're gonna make the most of it. If you look here, there's lots of them in there. Most of them already cut them off, most of them not doing so good. But we're gonna split them up and try and get the best we can out of it. We're gonna try and get 2 or more batches of these. But before we do that, we gotta get our soil ready again. So you can see here, yeah, I can get my hand into it, but it's dry. It's just not doing well, right? So we're gonna get these couple of weeds out of here. We're probably not gonna weed the whole thing because honestly it's getting too dry and we need something. So we'll leave these clovers, but these grasses we're gonna pull out. The reason why we're leaving the clovers is because clover is actually really good for regenerating your soil, puts nitrogen back into it. Look at there, we did get one cilantro that still made it. We got a couple of little ones, we'll see what happens with them. All right, so we're gonna break the soil back up. We're gonna put a little bit of rabbit manure down into a hole before we put these in there, which I grabbed a scoop of before I walked away. So we'll just go ahead and plop that down right there. Find a decent spot. We'll just go ahead and go right here. So just like what we showed you guys before, I'm just gonna squeeze the sides a little bit, push on the bottom. All right, so this one's not terrible, but if you see, it is starting to get root bound. Now the reason why I picked these up instead of going to the garden section is because if you go to the organic section, you can get a lot more for a lot less. I paid $3 for all these plants. $3 and $3 for the rosemary. And the rosemary, we're gonna do cuttings just like we did before. So we're gonna break up our soil a little bit. This isn't really all that bad. And we're just gonna gingerly pull it down the middle, breaking the least amount of roots as possible. There we go. You can see with the heat that we got how much these plants are just wanting to lay right over. Okay, so I forgot to put my manure in. It's not that big of a deal. We're just gonna pull it off right between the two sections and drop it down in there. The roots will find it. All right, so that's our basil. Now we're gonna move over. We're gonna do our rosemary right next to it. All right, so now while this one actually is two separate plants, we're gonna leave them together because we're gonna take cuttings from this and we're gonna disturb this as little as possible. Put our manure down in there, spread it out a bit. Now you'll notice this manure is already wet. And the reason for that is we're keeping it wet so that we can keep more moisture in there longer because of how hot it is. Now with rabbit manure, just like several others, I don't have to worry about burning my plants. It's what's known as a cold manure. So we're gonna put it right on top of it. We're also breaking up the soil a little bit. All right, take our remaining manure, just kind of spread it out a little bit, let it do its thing. Now for $6, I now have essentially a lifetime of rosemary because we're going to turn that into many plants, and plenty of basil, right? So we can keep adding more and more if we want, but we've already got basil up at the house, and we got some more right here, which will be more than enough for what we need. Now, something else that should be noted is I'm only watering these gardens in the evening because we don't want to burn them. Now, if we water them in the morning and it gets to be hot out, it gets to be super sunny out, all that water turns into a magnifying glass and actually winds up burning all your plants. So keep it simple. Just do it in the evening when it has plenty of time to soak up, plenty of time to dry off, and good to go again. All right, love y'all. Have a good one. Okay, now let's get into it. So we've put that basil in the ground, we put the rosemary in the ground, and we've been taking cuttings from them ever since. Some of them for eating, some of them for drying, some of them for propagating into other plants. Today, I want to get into the basil because I've already harvested some of the rosemary and it's already on its, I don't even know how many rounds we've on that one now. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this one. I've already harvested some of these about, actually be about 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to show you this again now and we're going to move on from there. So check this out. This is really, really cool. Basil grows pretty fast. We don't need any of this. Here's our basil, right? We got another one back here. Here's the rosemary. That rosemary was about up to here. But this basil here, every time we cut it, not only will it grow up taller again, but it's gonna put off some more shoots. So here, I'll bring you in for a close-up on that. Every time we cut this, you can see where it's been cut. Oops, I guess we'll eat that one. Anyway, that smells really good. We need someone to invent some smell-o-vision, I'm telling you. Far more interest would be put, oh, you know what? On second thought, maybe that's not such a good idea. I can see some pretty nasty smells coming through that. We'll just leave it at that one. All right, so anyway, we just take some general cuttings, nothing spectacular, because the reason why we don't have to be too particular on this is, one, it's a very forgiving plant, and second is these roots come from virtually the entire thing. It's a lot like cucumbers. Every time they touch the ground, they lay down new roots. Squash, they do the same thing. Potatoes, they do the same thing. You know, there's a lot of plants that do. I actually didn't know that basil was so easy to propagate. In fact, the first time I did it was actually on accident because I had an abundance and we had more than what we needed to dry in that moment. So I cut a bunch of extras for Wendy to put in the windowsill, and put it in a cup, and lo and behold, it started growing roots like crazy. So we'll show you that in a second. So, and we found out that it doesn't have to be on any nodules or anywhere where we pop a leaf, whatever. Just wherever it touches water, you're getting roots. So, something else I want to show you simply because I forgot my knife and I forgot my pruning shears. So, this is how little this plant cares. You can literally just go in, find one that's, see, that's a good offshoot, so we'll let that one keep going. But literally just take it, pinch it, give it a twist. And the reason why we're twisting it is because it's very fibrous. So we don't want to pop the plant from the base. See what I mean by it? It's very fibrous. Anyway, we'll take the bottom couple of leaves off here just so that we can, well, so we can eat them. But you don't even have to do that, because anywhere you put that in water is going to create some more roots. So we're going to leave these to go because I want more offshoots to kick up from where it's at. There's a lot of growing to be done on these, and they can really stand to be left alone a while because we got so much more going on over here, which is what I'm going to show you right now. So hold up. Okay, so these are some of the last ones. Oh, here we actually did 2 rounds. You can remember these were supposed to be just long enough to preserve them for Wendy, so she can need them or use them as she needed them. But, and this is the second round of these we've done. We didn't plant the first ones because we still needed them. But look at these roots. That's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 plants. 5 plants. That's 5 plants. And when we separate these, I'll show you just how prolific these things really are. They just take off absolutely anywhere. You can see it didn't make a lick of difference where them roots came out of. Wherever it touched water. And you know, it's not just one, you know, all of them did that. So now some of them, you know, they do have more roots than others, but that's because they're all bundled up tight to each other and they're competing with one another. So I'm sure if I would have put less of them in this little cup, which they've sucked up almost all the water, and if I would have put pond water in there instead of just from the tap, they probably would have done even better yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these, and we're going to plant them. We are going to let these guys take off. Let's see, we'll do 3. So take the 3 shorter ones, 1, 2, 3, and we'll save these 2 for a different one. Oops, I just broke a couple of them off. And the reason why we're going to do 3 is because these things are awesome. Now, you're not going to get a whole lot in them, but these things are really, really good for herbs. They're actually stackable. I probably should have brought a few over so I can show you that. I'll show you later on, I guess. But they just keep stacking. You just keep turning it. It goes up, 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 up. But, so we're going to use them to plant our basil in. And just like I was showing you in that first video, it doesn't require the greatest soil. It does need a little bit of nutrients, but not much. So what we're going to do is we're going to put just a little bit of rabbit manure at the bottom, not much, very, very little, and then we're going to put some dirt on top of it. We're going to, you know, make sure the dirt's nice and loose, put our plants in, and then we're going to water it. So let's get to it. So one of the things I like to do is whenever I'm setting up a project, I always try and think at least 2 other projects ahead. So, hey, what can I use this later on for? So this actually is not a rabbit cage. I built this for quail. And we can get into that in a later video if you'd like, because there is a difference. But it has a mesh bottom at the bottom. It's hardware cloth at the bottom with 1/2-inch holes. And what that allows the rabbits to do is whenever they poop, it goes right to the ground. Whenever they pee, it goes right to the ground and keeps going. So now I have all this super small, already dry rabbit manure that I don't have to do anything with. Now, technically, you don't have to do anything with rabbit manure anyway because it's a cold manure, but I don't have to worry about drying it in order to get any pests that might be in it. So we're just going to dump, well, maybe just a little bit more than that. A little bit in there. And that's all we're going to do. Just that very little bit on the bottom. Because again, basil doesn't need super rich soil. So now I've got all that rabbit manure that's underneath there that is already dry and ready to go, and anything I don't use, I'm going to bag up and I'll put it in another spot because I got quail that are getting ready to go in there. So let's go ahead and put our dirt in. And this is actually dirt from our potato garden, which we've already harvested, which that video, I don't know if it'll be before or after this one, but just look for that one too. I do a lot of different experiments to figure out what works, and not necessarily what works, but what works for me, because what works for me may not work for you. We got different climates, different environments, different altitudes, different water, yada yada yada, right? There's all kinds of different things. But the point is, if you don't experiment, you're not gonna know. So I mean, this gardening is one of them things that you have to try it and either fail or succeed to know. And if you fail, use that as a success, because now you know that particular thing doesn't work, and that failure might be a solution for something else later on. So just keep that in mind when you're doing something. You know, a lot of times the problem is the solution for something else, which is basically permaculture at its core. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of this finer soil, I'm gonna break it up and just keep throwing it on in there. Now some of this is actually really hard still because it hasn't been wet in a while. But we're just gonna keep breaking it down and setting it up. Now notice I'm not gonna mix this one because this is soil that's from another garden that's already mixed. But this was mixed for potatoes, so it should stay mostly loose. But I grabbed the one that is going to be a little bit harder. It's got more of my native soil in it, which is what we just pulled that basil out of when we clipped it, than anything else. It does got very little compost in it because the compost that I put in it was at the beginning of the season, and that compost was already pulled from the end of last season. So this soil is very deprived, and this is actually perfect because most most herbs are weeds, and weeds, as people know, will grow virtually anywhere. You know, they're not a plant that needs a whole lot of attention. I mean, you saw how weedy that garden was that I just did that took that one clipping from. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, if it's super rich, it's not going to do the best. So we got this just about done here. You need to crush it up a little bit, which it'll do better once we put some water in it. But when we're going to put this stuff in, we have to keep in mind that those roots have been in water from the beginning. They've never been outside the water, so they're going to be very tender. So we need to make sure that we're not smashing them up as we're planting them. All right, that should be it. We don't really want to go right up to the top. We're going to be moving it around, and yeah. So let's dig ourselves a little hole here. There's another reason why I like these pots, because you got that big center point in it that'll hold all your dirt while you're moving it around. I'm just going to very gingerly open these roots up the best I can without breaking them. Set them in there, push my dirt in around it. Now I am going a little bit higher, kind of like you would for a tomato plant, and that's only for the stability of the plant until the roots start to take hold. Let's do that 2 more times. You can see where even the cuttings were starting to put off offshoots. Right here and right here. I mean, people really kind of go overboard on, well, you need this, you need that, and it's so hard, and you know, you can't do these things. And they're plants. Yeah, some of them are more difficult than others, but especially when you're talking herbs, very, very forgiving. You don't have to put a whole lot of extra effort into it. But these basil only sat in the water for about 2 weeks. And I mean, like I said, I did it on accident the first time. So I did it a second time so that we can plant them, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep these inside over the winter. Now they'll stay outside for as long as possible because that'll be the best conditions available. We'll probably just put it back in the same general area. But now because these are cuttings, because they have been transplanted, they are going to be a little bit slower to grow. And then especially over the winter, which is why I wanted to do 3 of them in this pot, not just 1. So now that's ready for water. Easy peasy. Now I do have this larger pot, which I'm very curious about. I do have a bunch of those, but I want to try one of these larger ones just to see. I want to know how deep the roots are going to go, because if I don't, I want to know what the minimum is that I can get away with. Like, those are very shallow pots, so I don't know how big they're going to get. The ones that are in the garden there, I don't know how deep their roots go. I've never actually pulled the basil up. We always just cut it at its base and let its nutrients break down into the soil. So this way I'm gonna put it in a pot that should be a bit more than what it needs. I'm guessing, I don't know. Again, we're experimenting. So this way when I go to pull it, we'll know exactly how deep them roots are going. There's really no sense in, like, again I doubt, if the roots don't go as deep as this pot is, why would I waste this size pot and this much dirt on a plant that's never going to use it? You know, this is better off for a small tomato plant or something like that. But we're at the end of the season, so now is a really good time to be experimenting with these herbs. That should be good right there. Oh, that's a rock. Okay, so we'll dig our hole. Let's see, how many do we got? Well, we got some of these taller ones here. I don't know if I should start with a short one or a tall. You know what? Let's do one of each. We got these other 2 short ones here. We'll do one of those and one of these tall ones, and see if that makes a difference in the same pot. So we don't want to dig in the center. Let's dig off to the side, and we'll do 2 of them in here. There's a good short one right there. Trying to pick one out that's got good roots with it, because those 2, they were missing about half the roots. Oh wow. Oh, that's that. Okay, that's actually only one plant. It's one plant that had an offshoot on it before I put it in the water. So that one's not going to work. I mean, I'm sure it would work, but it's not going to work for our experiment. Here's the short one. All right, we'll do this little one right here. Alright, let's go through and we'll put a taller one in now. Fluff up our roots a bit. You can actually see where I made that original cut, where it's still at a slant like that. Normally you would expect that's where all that water is going to go in, but apparently not with these. You can see a couple of roots came out, but not very much. Now, just looking at the roots, I'm going to guess the roots are going to want to go wider rather than deeper, which in this case is exactly what we want. And after you bury that, one's not super taller than the other, is it? Most of that had roots on it, so we just went ahead and buried the roots. Alright, so we'll give that until the end of the season. We'll leave them both outside and see what we get. And in the meantime, have fun, pray to our Creator, give Him all the glory is due, because this is all His. Even the creativity and the thoughtfulness of being able to experiment and just be able to sit outside in the sunshine with this homemade table. It's all because of Him. So give Him the glory. It's Him and Him alone. We just get to live within His grace. So I love y'all. Have a good one.